Hi, and thanks for watching another instructional video for CSCI 1300. In this video, we will talk about using brackets correctly and proper syntax with declaring if statements. In the code here, we have a couple of if statements that we're going to test by comparing a value and seeing what happens. The first thing I'd like to note is if you have an if statement with a single operation, so if this evaluates to true, and you only need to do one thing, it's okay to not use brackets. It's totally syntactically correct, and it's pretty easy to read. You're not going to have any errors doing this. However, if you do something larger than this, you will need to use brackets. One thing I'd like to point out here is a common error that a lot of people make when they're first trying to use if statements, and that is that if they leave a semicolon here after the parentheses, this will not be evaluated as a conditional check, meaning that this if statement will be seen by the compiler as a declaration. And so because of the semicolon, the entire if check here becomes invalidated, and the else block is only what is syntactically correct. So I'm going to show you what that looks like when I run the code. Notice that we're getting an error message saying that the else is without a previous if. Well, that's because this if is not being seen as an if statement because of the semicolon after it. So if I take the semicolon out and I recompile, we're not going to get any errors. So just to check our numbers here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the number 10. And notice that if I enter the number 10, we should go into the first if statement and print no brackets. And we should also go into the second if statement and reduce the number down to 0. Lastly, one of the biggest things that I cannot stress enough when starting to code is to move brackets down from where they would normally reside when you first start typing out your brackets. The reason why is because if you have a large chunk of code, the larger your code gets, it becomes harder and harder to identify where your brackets start and stop. And a lot of students and a lot of programs in general tend to lose track of their braces by either taking one out and deleting it and forgetting that they put it in or something like that, by not dropping their bracket. So I can't stress it enough. Drop your brackets so that your code is easily identifiable in a section or a chunk of your program. And this also comes into play when, say, we need to do nested statements. So if I need to put something within this else as a secondary check, then I need to make sure that this is easily identifiable. The scope of this has its own scope, and that scope resides within the larger scope of the else. That's all for using correct syntax with brackets. Thanks, and happy coding!